Experiences and knowledge with regards to Buddhism and global interfaith movement. Reverend Toshie Fujita and Koichi Sugino very kind to invite me to share some of my understanding in these regards. Hopefully I won't be too disappointing their expectation with my really limited experience in my aspect. Okay. Religion has often been considered as a cause of conflict or intensifier of conflict among peoples of the world. However, in the recent century, there has been significant movement initiated by religious groups, such as the rare opportunity where the Buddhists of different traditions could get together with our Catholic clergies of various denominations to share their thoughts, spiritual practices, and personal stories and insights. This is the very first time when Buddhists and Catholics from the United States are holding an interreligious dialogue meeting in the Castle Gandolfo near Rome, focused on the themes of suffering, liberation, and fraternity, June 23rd to 27, 2015. I believe this conference was calling from the present Pope Francis to foster peace and bridge the gap among the different religions. In this case, the gaps between Buddhism and Catholicism. During the 5 days conference, a strong commitment could be sensed and shows both sides are willing to foster friendship and to develop the openness towards one another in setting what is called the La Santa Sede or the Holy See. From a perspective, this event truly what is holy is the friendship established by the two parties that is based upon mutual understanding and respect. Such bonds of friendship grow almost spontaneously out of selfless love and compassion for the social problems and religious intolerance. Thus, the two parties recognized one another as friends working for the same goal, liberation and fraternity. I think the conference confirmed that their spiritual friendship transcended religious boundaries. What is to see is the spirit brought up by the representative of two major world religions that is committed to work closely on the spiritual, socio-economic, and environmental issues in the modern society. There were probably numerous interfaith going on in the past 125 years. Yet it is still believed that the change is slow. One possible reason is that the most interfaith activities fail to address an essential contradiction in religion which obtains at the deepest levels. But I need to correct this because I think just now Reverend Sugino have presented a very nice, I should have listened to that before I write this paper. Anyway, so it looks like they have the Soka. The organization here itself actually has really done a very good job for this world peace and interfaith job. Okay, I think then in that way I need to cut this slide off and move on to the next slide. Okay. All right, there were probably numerous interfaith going on in the past. I'm sorry, I repeat that again. I need to go at so the obstacle to the purpose of interfaith could probably land to not interested in religion. Don't really care what you believe. Religions might be false, but at least helpful to pave a constructive way to society, or interfaith could prevent wars, etc. But this time in Rome, the participants of the dialogue between Buddhism and Catholicism in many ways are different. Almost all of the participants are deeply religious, very knowledgeable to their tradition or denomination, and in fact, many of them actually help define the modern expression of the religions they present. Meeting Pope Francis probably is one of the sensational and spiritual journey as well. To speak for myself, the moment when you saw such a kind, enthusiastic Pope deliver speech with sincerity to his messages, and especially hold hands to me, I saw an important figure of humankind for the world and human welfare. I know we have more hope for the future now because in the multi-faith and troublesome time, being friends cannot and should not be limited by the boundaries of the faith traditions. It reminds me once Ananda, the attendant of the Buddha, said to the Buddha, "This is half the holy life, blessed one, a memorable friendship, a memorable companionship, a memorable camaraderie." But then the Buddha replied, "Don't say that. Ananda, don't say that. A memorable friendship, a memorable companionship, a memorable camaraderie is actually the whole of the holy life." Not only limited to conference, we have many times to discuss our future cooperation subjects ranging from economic injustice, war and violence, racism and ecological crisis, and so on. Another mutually enlightening and empowering experience of the conference was that it created an interreligious space. Every morning, we participate in different Buddhist traditions and different Catholic denomination services in which Buddhist and Christian participants share their spiritual practices and services such as meditation and Mass, respectively. Another interesting experience at the conference was the promising presence of dual practitioners of both Buddhism and Catholicism. Such as we have a good speaker here, Professor Leo Lafebre, Professor Donald Michel, to name it a few, an experienced clergyman with regards to equal human suffering in today's world, like Reverend Kyoichi Sugino. Okay. Now, I'd just like to just say something about Buddhism. Then you can relax more. Okay. Since its conception of Buddhism has been interacting with different religions and philosophies such as Hinduism, freethinkers, or whatever we call the 62 views, emerged from materialism, nihilism, eternalism, and so on. When Buddhism arrived in China, in particularly 4th century, the interaction has never been intensified as to Confucianism and Taoism in the history of China. In Christianity, they are the word, I just want to say that the Buddhism has been engaged actually a lot of dialogue in the past, even during the Buddha's time. Okay. It is understood that there are two main streams of Buddhism. I think Sugino just mentioned something. In the old and the present times, the Mahayana, but he liked to put it Theravada, so I like to put it as a Hinayana, but anyway, even though the term is not very nice, but it's so popular nowadays. Okay. The Mahayana emphasis on the importance of being bodhisattva, which comprise the concept of emptiness and the great compassion, while the later, you may say Theravada Hinayana, is that mostly focused on becoming the sainthood, leading one to complete cutting off the defilements as their ideologies. According to Bodhicharya Avadara, Introduction to the Practice of Awakening is a Buddhist text name. The Mahayana monk, philosopher like Santideva, makes an extensive literature in which he concludes that we should commit to impartial benevolence and remove everyone's suffering without partiality. For instance, in the 8 chapters, he writes in such a way, "I should eliminate the suffering of others because it is suffering, just like my own suffering. I should take care of others because they are sentient beings, just as I am a sentient being. When happiness is equally dear to others and myself, then what is so special about me that I strive after happiness for myself alone? When fears and suffering are equally abhorrent to others and myself, then what is so special about me that I protect myself but not others?" Surely, this ideology in Mahayana we might familiar with is not completely alien to even Hinayana school. Take this Abhidhamma Kosa in case as a point. For what reason do they undertake the effort? They make the effort for the welfare of others, so they could become able to rescue others from the great flood of suffering. How does the welfare of others benefit them? Since they desire the welfare of others, it is their own welfare. This passage echoes lots of reasoning debate within our very own heart. For what reason we have to undertake this daunting job or effort for the welfare for others, like Reverend Sugino trying to do and going traveling here and traveling there and try to communicate with people. So why rescue others from the great flood of suffering will do good for ourselves? So I just try to have a logical and solving this, from a Buddhist perspective, solving this problem, even for theological or the philosophical, Buddhist philosophical perspective. One of the problems that Buddha has foreseen was the self or ego within our gene. In one hand, we need to take care of oneself, and on the other hand, we need to constantly check with the egoistic self could harm and define our virtuous self. The earlier one, the taking care of oneself in believing there is a good self, probably take it as conventional person. As you say, oh, I'm who and I have done something good in my life. However, accepting the non-existence of any enduring and everlasting independent self has something related psychological effects to us as well, in particular to welfare of others. First, the eliminating of the belief in the self lessens self-cherishing, making it easier for the bodhisattvas training to give up his possession and even his life for others. Second, the destruction of the belief in an enduring and everlasting self results in an extreme psychological flexibility, in turn gives much space the bodhisattva to radically identify his well-being with the well-being of others. This concept of selfless content mostly in the Mahayana Buddhism may well be concluded above two reasons. In other words, I'm here even though I may become a monk as a Hinayana tradition, but I still encourage you to follow the Mahayana because of this important concept about the self and how we understand the self, what we call the selfless and no self. Okay. So for the better of the word and for the better of interfaith dialogue too. All right, I guess I need to cut some short. Okay. In the Buddha's time, the most frequent prescribed Nikaya or Agama of the Sravaka text, the Buddha persuaded society to respect people for their inner morality and good conduct as the main attitude for people to enjoy a meaningful social life. In the account, the Buddha mentioned, one does not become a respectful person by birth. One does not become a disgraceful person by birth either. One becomes a respectful person by action. One becomes a disgraceful person by action. This surely has inspired, one of the Indian, he just passed away actually. He passed away in 1956, but he had really did a really good job for the Indian nation. So like Dr. Bhimarao Ramji Ambedkar, to form a modern Buddhist movement as a campaign against social discrimination, against, in particular, untouchable in India. Okay. The Buddha not merely endeavored to promote healthy monastic and lay community. He constantly advocated patience, tolerance, and open-mindedness towards different religious theories and practices. Quite often, he reminded us need to open our minds to what others say, think, believe, and practice instead of becoming mere in the rigid belief system. The Buddha, actually I quote from Sutta say, the Buddha, that basically he said, the Buddha replied that a person, I have seen the adverse efforts of taking speculative views as true, so I am not attached to any of the speculation. But then his student asked, do you have any speculative views to your own? Then the Buddha said, speculative views of my own, vachi or vacha, I have broken free of clinging to any speculation. Okay. But the dialogue actually just wanted to say that even in Buddhism, if people are just still hold on what they believe in the tenets, but they will harm the others. But it's always a safe way that not to hold any will, but rather than just a kindness and a good mind. Okay, that's what the Buddha is trying to impart the message. Given at the time in India, there are more than 1,000 religious views, we can learn from the Buddha perspective that there are certain rules and views to minimal, accessible universally to all human beings, and is what enables all human goodness, by not depriving human life in 5 precepts as an example. Surely, merely advocating someone to prevent from doing wrong things won't serve the main purpose. It is also relatively important to empower human moral responsibility, in part by practicing through faith or meditation activating conscious inscribed within the human hearts. I'm almost done. Okay. Buddhism is always a sense of urge to act without futile. Most of the Buddhist practices are designed to enable the overcoming the suffering. It is well applied to the minor discourse with Malunkhya Buddha, and one of the Buddhist texts recounts the story of the man who was wounded with poisonous arrow and insisted to the doctor that he wanted all the details about the person who shot the arrow, during which time he expires. This sense of urgency not only be taken to address social problems or social crises, but also releasing one's mental problem. Seemingly, Buddhism might wrongly be mistaken as only monastic members are the only one could live happily through practice. Given the account in a certain sutra like Anguttara Nikaya, 2 kinds of happiness exist. One is a lay life, so you don't have to be a monk and monastic members. Okay. And the other in renounced life, just like us. Okay. Of these 2 happiness, renounced life is better. 2 kinds of happiness exist also. One derived from the sensual satisfaction, and the other derived from the giving up sensual satisfaction. Furthermore, the Buddha's emphasis on the importance of happiness by eradicating poverty. Poverty is called suffering in the world, the Buddha said. So, too is getting into debt. A poor person who becomes indebted is troubled while enjoying himself. The householder endowed with faith has made a lucky draw in both cases, for his welfare in the present life and happiness in future life. Thus, it is that for home or householder, this merit increase through generosity. Okay. The further illumination of this sutta is the name is called the debt. Say, just so, in the noble one disciple, one whose faith infirm, who is endowed with shame, dreading wrong, wise and restrained by virtual behavior, is said to live happily in the noble one disciple. Hence, I just sum up the basic teaching of the Buddha by illuminating the importance of generosity, in this sense putting away the debt and poor, developing virtue but not limiting oneself to observe basic principles, but also casting away define hindrances, something that will affect our mental, that help someone to retain energy. Then lastly, practicing meditation to see things as they are in order to eradicate the defilements, basically. That's what I end up my talk. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.